Hello, you amazing people. Welcome back to RXMemes. Today, we are going to be reading some real juicy revenge stories from r/prorevenge. I feel like what I need today is just some satisfaction of reading these stories. Do you know what I mean? If you like today's video, don't forget to subscribe, turn your post notifications on, and if you want to touch base with me, you can reach out to me on my socials. They are on the screen, and let's get right on into the video. Memorable farewell. Accidentally discovered this stub and felt I could share my story. Before I get started, a little bit about my field. It's the infamous IT, or information technology. Yes, you could say I'm a modern day slave. I'm not a techie, but a professional who manages other techies, assign projects, coordinate, administer projects, and do what is known as talent engagement at a junior level. Since I didn't earn direct revenue, I was not considered as valuable as a real technology guy. At the same time, I needed to work well over 50 hours a week without additional pay, and sometimes work weekends too. In the situation I was in, you could say this was a reasonably well-paying but stressful job. My solace were people, technology consultants, who knew what value I was bringing to the table and became friends. Learning was great, so far so good. Since I was a cheerful soul, I didn't mind extra work and was generally considered a maintenance-free resource. My boss had high expectations from me. I was from a humble university in a small city and was hesitant to trumpet my achievements. Was under impression that my work would speak for itself. At that time, I was far away from my hometown and freshly heartbroken in love, and thus devoting all of my free time and work, 100% devoted. The company was growing, and so my department and I got 2 university freshers as trainees to support my work. I was given a hint that if everything goes well, I may get promoted as an assistant manager. I was happy. The fresh grads, let's call them Jane and Joe, were really cool, and we became sort of buddies. I did my best to teach them the work and acted as informal mentor. As time flew, we started sharing our stories, started going for weekend drinks, etc. One evening, when I was finishing tons of paperwork for recruitment drives, I was in HR. We were discussing our salaries. Jane pointed out that I was really naive and possibly a fool, not knowing my worth. She said she noticed how hard I was working and genuine I was, and because of my nature, she is letting the secret out. Turned out, despite I leading the team and having 3 years of experience in the field, I wasn't even making half of what she was offered. I was surprised and felt really insulted. Not because of her, but my boss. I started planning my exit. I really wanted to make it grand, however, didn't know how to go about it. Then it dawned on me. I was asset for this firm because I could do multitasking in 2 or 3 different fields. I started saying yes to almost any project that came my way. Started working on weekends to execute it perfectly, just to refresh my knowledge. And of course, started attending interviews. I ended up with a job and I negotiated my salary that was 3 times of what I was making. I outperformed competition thanks to all the extra work I had taken up. In case you wish to know, they were talent engagement programs, HR insights, analytics, and business analysis. I can't pinpoint who was the a-hole in chief in my management team. My immediate superior was a spineless guy and yes man to his boss. His boss, let's call him Peter, was a truly unique piece of shit that I've ever seen. They gracefully told me that they are still reconsidering my promotion. It was 6 months since I successfully managed 2 projects and overachieved the targets given to me, so I requested some vacation as I needed a break. They obliged. I went to my hometown, spent 2 memorable weeks with Dad and Mom, and told them I was moving forward to a next job. Finished my vacation and reached office looking my best. Brought some gifts for everyone in the department, gave a small treat, then put my resignation on the table. I did see the piece of cake literally getting stuck in the throat of the boss. They immediately sprang into action to know what was wrong. By then, I figured I needed at least 2, if not 3 people to do my job. I enjoyed during my notice period and very politely said, "Thank you for everything," to my boss, who was playing nice in front of me all along. After a couple months, I got a confidential call from the vice president of HR requesting some inputs. I shared my first-hand experience, consistent top-notch performance in their treatment. She apologized profusely and said I had an offer on her table if I wished to join. I left the city as it was planned, went on a fresh start, grew well in my new organization. The bomb? I recruited those 2 buddies whom I had trained, in a different branch of my new company. After a year, I heard that my department didn't exist anymore. Top management couldn't justify the cost of 4 senior people they had to hire to replace a team of 3. Not sure if this qualifies as a pro-revenge, but it was my way of saying F you without actually saying it. Boss fires me for no reason. Got what she deserves. Okay, first off, this is my first post and I suck at writing, so forgive my spelling and grammar mistakes. I worked at a company straight out of high school that deals with sports workwear as well as branding. I went to the interview for a storeman responsible for the cage, a place where we kept orders that were ready to be delivered as well as orders that are still awaiting payment, starting in early 2018, and it went well for the first 2 months. Then I found boxes of orders from more than 6 years ago and asked my boss about it. Her answer was to move me from the warehouse to the financial department to find out why they are still there. Now first, I know almost nothing about finance. Secondly, as a guy of over 2 meters tall sitting at a desk in a small office just doesn't work. But it came with a new job title, finance administrator, whatever that is, and a pay raise, so fine with me, getting paid more for the same job, and all I have to do is go through some old papers as well. Sign me up. So over the next couple of months, I made a list. I went through the whole cage and found more old orders. I found more than 80 orders, totaling over a couple million in value. Every time I figured out why they were still there, I added the reason to the list, as well as saying what happened to the items. My boss would look good in front of the owner if there was no reason as to why it was still there, or why it was there to begin with. My boss took that box, and I never thought of it again. I just updated the list with which boss took that order. So when I finally had a reason for every order older than 1 month that was still there, I got a raise again and went back to the original job I was hired for, still with the finance administrator title on my contract. I was suddenly called to my boss's office where I was told I was useless and not doing my job, and I was promptly fired. And here is where my revenge comes in. That list I had was on my computer, and the only copy of the list was in my personal email, as I would work from home sometimes. I hand wrote the list and then typed it up at home. So when I went to hand in my laptop, I made sure to remove everything that I did from it. No list, no emails, nothing left. I then contacted a lawyer to ask for advice. My dad recommended I do this, saying they have no valid reason for firing me. My lawyer had a field day with the case. I got more than 2 years worth of pay, my full contracted time, as well as an apology from my B of an ex-boss, but it doesn't end there. I contacted the owner of the company and informed him that I still had that list and how B had fired me with no reason, cost the company money, and how she took stock if I couldn't find a reason as to why it was still there. He informed me that he will look into this, and I sent him the list out of good faith. He was a nice guy the few times I met him. Finally, today I was talking to a friend that still works there. I was told that the police had shown up and had dragged that B away in cuffs for stealing stock. My revenge on my boss for trying to take my pay. This is a long one from a few years back when I was a teen working at a generic fast food restaurant while in school. I was 16 at the time and had been working at the store for a year or so. We had this supervisor who was just horrible to work for. He would leave us while we were packed with customers and sit on his phone talking the whole shift, only to come out to bark orders and abuse us for not working hard enough, eat the food we were cooking, and when customers complained, he would belittle us in front of them, blaming our attitudes. Now everyone hated this guy. Even the other supervisors hated him. He was lazy, and to be completely honest, I think he only had the job because his uncle owned the store. He would come in to start his shift, plant his ass in the office, and wouldn't come out unless it was to tell you how shit you are and how he isn't afraid to replace you. We were all teens working that needed the money for our families, and he knew this and would hold our jobs over our head. The store was in a bad area. We were all either supporting our families or trying to stay out of gangs and whatnot. The store is open until late so we can get good hours in after school. Well, this one particular night, we were very short-handed. It was me, my workmate Joe, and supervisor. Me and Joe assumed he would back us up and serve customers while I cooked and Joe made all the burgers and wraps. But no, he came in, planted his ass in the office, and told me to cook as well as do burgers and wraps, and Joe will serve. I protested and said it was too much for me to cover. He completely ignores me and acts as if he didn't hear a word I said. So I protest a little louder, and no joke, he turns to me and says, "Well, if you don't like it, you could kiss this job goodbye." I bit my tongue and returned to my duties pissed off. Joe was pissed off too. He knew that if supervisor ran things this way, he would receive all the abuse as he was the person out front serving. Like I said, we were in a bad area. Customers often came in drunk and irritable. There's often fights, and we get homeless people loitering and junkies. He knew he was going to get abused by someone tonight who would possibly throw something at him. Fast forward a few hours into our shift, and we are in the middle of our dinner rush. There's a shitload of orders to be made and not enough meat cooked to make it all. Customers are complaining about waiting times. I can hear Joe out the front getting absolutely destroyed by the growing mob of angry customers whom he is doing his best to keep calm. Supervisor, for the first time the entire shift, comes out to see what's happening. He sees the mob of angry customers who are starting to shout in anger, hurling insults and all. He goes out to confront them and calls me out to the front. As soon as I'm in sight of the mob and supervisor, he starts to berate me, throwing 1,000 questions at me at once. Why isn't this done? Why isn't that done? Abused me further. Then calls Joe over, abuses us both, and tells the customers he's sorry we are so incompetent and pulls us out back. If you two don't lift your game, you won't be working here any longer. And just because you fell so far behind, I'm taking tonight's pay from you. At this point, I wanted to kill him. We were working our asses off, well short-handed, and he didn't lift a finger to help us. I wouldn't let this slide. It lit a fire in me, and I was going to make sure I got paid for tonight no matter what. So I plotted. I planned. I concocted a most evil plan in my pot of payback potions and would soon conjure it into existence. I even asked Joe for help with it, and he agreed willingly once I told him the plan. This plan would make us legends of our store. Executing the plan. After the rush was over and we were about to close shop, I went on my break. Remember how I said we had a lot of homeless people loitering? Well, I'm thankful we did. While I was on my break, I convinced a homeless man to come and take a dump in the urinal in our bathroom, and I would get him some free food. He laughed at me at first and asked if I was serious. It took a little convincing, as he couldn't believe someone was asking him to do something he usually does without being asked or offered food for. He agrees after a bit, but I told him I would have to sneak him in with the help of Joe. I bring him to the slide doors, then signal Joe to distract supervisor long enough for him to turn his head from the computer screen and cameras. We slip in and make it to the bathroom. When we get there, I tell him to go in and do the deed while I go make his food. He giggles and agrees and heads in. I headed to the kitchen where Joe is and tell him the job is underway and I'll need a distraction to get him out once he's done. Joe tells me he will go tell supervisor he is leaving. It will give me a moment to get him back out quick. I make the guy's food and head back to the bathroom entrance, but he is still not out. I was waiting a good 10 minutes. He had been in there over 20 minutes. When he exited, I catch a whiff of a most foul odor seeping from the bathroom. What the hell, dude? What did you do in there? He tells me he may have missed a bit, but job's done more or less. I give his food to him and signal Joe to distract again. Once he does, I sneak out old guy out of the store and thank him for his help, to which he replies, I've been asked some weird shit, but you kid are messed up. I wasn't about to let him steal my pay from me. I was going to make him pay for it. I head back to the bathroom to check, and I tell you I couldn't have asked the guy to do a better job. I was aiming for a stool in a puddle, but this was something else. It had overflown out of the urinal, down the wall, and onto the floor. It was everywhere. Joe swings by on his way out and couldn't believe what he was seeing. I shook his hand and said to him, It was a pleasure to work with you and good luck. He leaves and I go to confront supervisor. Once I reach the office, I let everything go on him. I swore at him, told him I quit, Joe's gone home, I'm leaving, nothing has been cleaned for clothes, and someone took a shit in the urinal again. He begged me not to leave while I laughed at him maniacally. I told him to piss off. You want to take my pay? Take the job too. Have fun scraping poop off the wall. I threw my shirt at him, walked out, and never went back. I heard from Joe that supervisor was there all night cleaning and everything and was forced to clean the bathroom. Everyone except supervisor knows what I did and cheered for me for doing it. I went down in store history for the next year because it closed after that and was replaced by another generic fast food store. I actually had to, I was picturing that so vividly and I had to stop myself from gagging for pretty much the entire end of this story. Boss wouldn't pay me the money I earned, so I had his company shut down. Another fuck you moment. Last year I started working for a local plumbing company that seemed promising, would pay top dollar to employees for good old-fashioned labor, so I signed my W-2 and went on my way. Seems legit, right? I started out making an hourly wage, was given my own work van, and was offered a work cell phone. However, if you used your personal cell phone, the owner of the company would pay your bill because you're using your own phone. How neat is that? Fast forward a month or two, I was forced to make commission based off of every job, and I didn't have a say in this, but 20% of every job you go to? Hell, that's a lot of money in plumbing, so I was none the wiser. Eventually I found out that my paychecks weren't having any taxes taken out of them, so I asked my boss, why am I not having taxes taken out of my check? To which he replied, when we switched you to commission, you're a subcontractor now. You're 1099. You're gonna be making so much bank now, bro. Didn't sign a 1099 form, but okay. As the time went on, I started working 90-hour weeks with no break. If my phone was turned off and the office folk tried to reach me and couldn't, they would take money out of my paycheck. The phone bill never got paid. There would be days where I wouldn't make a single dime because the boss would mess something up in our system. We also had no heat in our vans, and when it got to minus 14 degrees outside, his words to us were, "Go buy a fucking blanket. I can't afford repairs like this right now." Well, he is in Florida on a cruise with his whole family, so like anyone else, I just up and quit. Fuck that. When I left, I asked for my checks. I was owed 3 of them for the weeks I worked, but my boss wasn't ready to give them up yet. "You fucked me over, and now I'm gonna fuck you over," he said when I asked why he wasn't going to pay me. I offered multiple times for him to just meet me so this wouldn't have to go any further. He refused. I took to r/legal advice, bless them, and asked what I should do. The responses led me to LARA, Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, to file a wage claim to get my money. But on top of that, I filed a report with them stating the company doesn't pull permits, which is required to do, when replacing people's plumbing. So they sent over an investigator to check these claims out. I then went to the IRS to find out about the whole tax ordeal. I filed the proper paperwork to have the IRS check and see if I was misclassified as a 1099 employee when I should have been a W-2 employee since they weren't taking taxes out. Sure as shit, I was wrongfully not getting taxes taken out of my checks, so the IRS sent an investigator of their own. Now at this point, I see on my phone that I still have their email address linked to my Google account, so I do some snooping. It turns out they haven't paid city taxes in over 6 years, and that the office manager, a woman who has verbally abused me time and time again, collects disability through the state, but still collects a 1.5K paycheck from the company every week. You can bet ass I sent that in with the IRS, screenshots included in my email. This is how it all unfolded. I have a friend that still works, or rather worked for them at the time, and he told me about the investigators coming in. LARA fined them upwards of $50,000 for failing to produce the proper permits for work that was performed. They also paid me what the company owed me with interest since I waited over a month for those checks. On top of all this, the IRS made them pay for my taxes at the end of the year, took away the office manager's disability, audited them because they haven't paid city taxes, and fined them for each employee they did this to. At this time as well, all of his fleet vans broke due to wear and tear. This resulted in the company closing. When he asked me why I did all of this, my response was simply, "You fucked me over, so I fucked you over."